Welcome to the Greater Irvine Chamber Business Insights podcast series, where we address challenges and ideas for early-stage and entrepreneurial business leaders. Your host today is Dave Coffaro, Interim President and CEO of the Greater Irvine Chamber.
Well, hello, folks. This is Dave Coffaro, and welcome to the Greater Irvine Chamber of Commerce Business Insights podcast. Glad to have you with us today. And today we're discussing that elusive topic of employee engagement. So if you're a team leader, a manager, a founder, a CEO, this message is for you. Last week, I read a really disturbing Gallup organization headline. It said that U.S. employee engagement hit an 11-year low. So the opening lines of the report said, after peaking in January 2020, U.S. employee engagement, a critical factor in team productivity, has been trending downward. Gallup's latest measure finds that 4.8 million fewer U.S. employees are engaged now than at the end of last year, 2023. Yikes. I mean, this is going the wrong direction. Definitely not the way we want it to go, but don't despair. There is hope. And in fact, today we're joined by two people that I know are changing the whole trajectory of employee engagement. And they're going to share some of their insights about how they're changing the paradigm in employee engagement. So Julie Hudash is founder and CEO of Team Kids, and Daniel Horgan is founder and CEO of CoLabL. And really excited to have you both with us. Welcome, Julie and Daniel.
Wonderful to be here.
So, Julie, I want to start with you. Would you share just kind of a brief overview of Team Kids and the focus of your work?
Sure. So Team Kids is a nonprofit that was founded 23 years ago here in Irvine, and we've been based in Irvine this whole time, that we teach programs nationally. Our mission is to empower kids to change the world. We work with on-duty police and firefighters, and we run programs in schools that empower kids as our next generation of entrepreneurs and compassionate leaders and philanthropists. And so it's a pleasure to be here this morning, being an Irvine resident myself, and really proud to have a program that started here in Irvine with innovative partners that is now proven and spreading across the nation.
That's awesome. Daniel, tell us a little bit about CoLabL and the focus of your work.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave, and thanks for having me. CoLabL is essentially in business to increase equity in the workplace. We do that primarily through two main strategies. So it's around mentorship and talent development. A lot of our work centers around early career or entry-level talent within an organization, and specifically the people managers that are supporting them each and every day. And so we work with organizations like Taco Bell Foundation, which is headquartered right there in Irvine, to organizations that are also global in scale all around the world, like Pfizer, Deloitte, LinkedIn, and others. And so I'm super excited to be here. We've collaborated with Julie and the Team Kids team for many years now on lots of different projects. And so I'm excited to dive deeper with you.
Fantastic. This is definitely the power group to share on this topic. So, Julie, you and I have talked about the topic of employee engagement in the past and some of the common challenges and ideas about how leaders can have a really positive impact on engagement. How have you approached this topic with your folks at Team Kids?
I think, in generations past, employee engagement might have been a nice little shiny thing that companies added as a bonus, but, it's critical in this day and age. Not just since the pandemic, but so much has changed in the world. And, our incoming workforce, our Gen Z, they want professional growth and development. They want to work for companies that are aligned with their values. And they want to work for leaders, not bosses, and they want connection. And so it really takes a really deliberate approach to having employees feel part of the mission, whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit, that they're valued, they play an important role. And, Team Kids' mission is very much about adding value. And so I think it's aligned with what we do. But internally, our staff is really part of the planning, the delivery of our programs, training new staff. So we really engage them in the process of what we do at every level, including actually delivering programs, whether we're in Compton or Irvine or East Harlem. But but just really kind of creating that more of a dynamic approach to not only engaging employees, but engaging them in a way that they know that their time, their capacity, their efforts are aligned with the strategic plan, are aligned with the organization. So they look and say, because of that I did this XYZ project, we have 1,000 more kids that are empowered as leaders, or we were able to raise more money to expand our mission. So internally, it's really about engaging our team in a way that's really valuable and collective and collaborative. Externally, we also do that with our corporate partners. So we provide a lot of opportunities for employee engagement for our corporate partners, whether they sit on our boards or serve on a committee, or actually partner with the delivery of our program in our schools. So, I think that Gallup quote is quite tragic. I'm not surprised. But I think we need to be adding a lot more value. So people get up and they go to work and maybe they don't want to wake up. They feel good when they get there and they know that what they're doing is important. And so I think that was really, how this conversation came about. It also resulted in us deciding to hire a chief of staff. So that's a new position at Team Kids. And that came out of a discussion and strategic partnership with Dan and CoLabL is, I'm very busy traveling as the CEO and founder, but our team needs that chief of staff position whose goal specifically is, to support our team in their professional growth, but also, again, to make sure that they are clear about their roles and responsibilities and that the things that they're working on actually matter. They matter to moving the organization forward. And so this whole process, which I know Dan will share and we'll share more about, was really a brainchild as working with Dan as our national strategic advisor and really innovating to meet the needs of Team Kids, our team, and our strategic plan.
Julie, I want to go back to just sort of the thread of thoughts that you just shared with us. And part of what I hear in that, the way it sounded to me, is you're talking about having your employees co-own the mission. What I heard you say is wanting them to feel engaged, empowered in order to be able to fulfill the mission. And that sounds a lot different than I have a job.
Right. It is, Dave. And I have to tell you, I'm proud of a lot of things that our team and partners have accomplished in the 23 years. And I'm not being overly humble. I know I had a lot to do with that, but it is such a collaborative effort. And I think that spirit trickles down to everyone, even our college interns that we train to become part of, a pathway to employment at Team Kids. It's this feeling of purpose and connection. And one of the things, as I said, I'm most proud of is I have staff members and board members that have been on our team, maybe for months, maybe for a decade, whether they're on our staff anymore, whether they're on our board anymore, they still feel connected to Team Kids. They still feel like they're part of this mission and family. And so I think it might be one of our greatest assets is really, and again, this is what we hope to deliver through our mission with young people. So if we can't do it for each other, if we can't deliver this mission and help people know that they matter, they're significant and they're needed, how in the world can we build a team that could deliver that impact for young people?
And I wonder if that question that you just asked, if that sort of leads to some of the things that stand in the way of employee engagement. So Daniel, that makes me want to kind of pivot to you and your area of expertise. What would you sort of add that are some of the things that stand in the way of exceptional employee engagement?
Yeah, I think that there's three main things that come to mind from a lot of the work that we do with different organizations of all different sizes and industries. The first is connection. The second is curiosity. And the third is intentionality. And I'll break them down. So connection, I think, when you look at what gets in the way of employee engagement, it's employees needing to take the time to really discover who they are as individuals and what it is that lights them up every morning and motivates them to not just get out of bed, but to get out of bed with a sense of purpose and direction around what they want to achieve that day. I think it's also a sense of connection with each other. So often in our workplaces, whether we're in person, hybrid, or virtual, we're sort of navigating the world at a surface level. So how do we build stronger circles of trust? Damien Hooper Campbell says this great quote, how do we build those stronger circles of trust? We deep dive below the surface in our conversations with each other every day. And a perfect example of that is me just not walking by Dave and saying, "Hey, Dave, how's it going?" and continuing to walk. But it's pausing and genuinely being interested in how Dave is doing. I think it's also a connection to the mission. And this goes back to your question to Julie. Like, if people come in and just feel like they're tactically executing a to-do list, their sense of drive, their sense of motivation will gradually decrease over time. But if they are connected to the mission and helping to co-create the strategy to implement the mission, they're going to feel much more compelled and a part of the team, which lends itself to the second point, which is curiosity, right? Connection is at a surface level, but if curiosity is in play, you dive below the surface in your relationship building with one another, inside the organization, externally with customers, with vendors, with other partners that you're collaborating with. But it's also curiosity around the business. Again, I work with a lot of early career talent. They come right out of school into a job. They get excited for the first year or two. And what they don't see is the path forward. The person ahead of them and their team, if that person is not going anywhere, then that young professional thinks to themselves, well, then this place isn't for me. Instead of zooming out and having the coaching, the mentorship, the support of managers, guiding them to say, let's understand the bigger picture here at the organization and how your skills, your experiences can be transferable to some of those other opportunities. And that, again, is the third point, which is intentionality. None of this happens without all of us being intentional. Managers being intentional with taking the time to listen. What makes Julie such a great leader and creates that culture at Team Kids is that she's accessible. Anybody on her team, from the intern to the chief of staff, knows how to get a hold of Julie and ask whatever question or support guidance they need. Managers providing that same level of intentional relationship building is what's going to be game changing, I think, for driving up employee engagement.
So that opens up this whole perspective on relationships at work that I kind of feel has changed, but we haven't really acknowledged the change. So I'll use myself as an example. When I started my career, I went into a job and there was a pretty clear organizational chart, and you weren't supposed to talk to anybody who was like above your manager or two steps removed, or, don't even make eye contact if the boss walks through, that kind of thing. What I hear you talking about is this whole idea that Julie demonstrates, which is we're part of the same family. We're part of the same group. We're all connected, and we're here for a common purpose, which is to fulfill the mission. And that just feels a lot different. That feels a lot more engaging than to think of yourself in terms of, I'm a box on this organizational chart.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we talk about it at CoLabL. Our work is about relationship-centered workplaces, right? So any business, regardless of industry, will do well if it prioritizes people. So not just your own employees, but your own customers. Like, we get the customer side of the equation often, right? We know we need to understand what the customer is interested in, how we can best service and support them. But what we often fail to do is put that same level of attention and detail to our own people who are driving the mission. And again, when we do that, they feel more engaged, they drive more innovation, right? They stay longer, they grow into different roles and opportunities and take the business in places that make it relevant.
Yeah, I think that matters a ton. Another thing you said, Daniel, that I just want to kind of highlight is this whole notion of curiosity. And I think often managers, leaders miss the opportunity to capitalize on the curiosity of the team members. By that, I mean, everybody has a different perspective on everything. It could be a sunny day outside and one person says it's sunny and beautiful and the sky is blue, and somebody else says, no, there's a cloud way over there, and focusing on different things. The benefit to hearing different perspectives and the curious part of each employee's sort of way they show up is if we can hear those different views and what they find intriguing and opportunities and areas for improvement in the organization, we're going to hear things differently than we would if we just take it on ourselves and say, what's going well, what's not. So hearing those different views, and I love it when like a new employee joins an organization and you say, tell me what we do that doesn't make any sense to you. Because what I think tends to happen is when you're with an organization, for a few months, a few years, you don't see things the same. You don't see those things that kind of stood out at the beginning. So I think the curiosity and kind of nurturing that curiosity with employees can be a really, really powerful thing. I want to ask, I'm sorry.
If I could just add one quick thing to that point, because I think it's so we're working on a big project right now with Jobs for the Future around worker voice. And specifically, how do we connect the dots between frontline workers and management? And we completed a worker voice survey with 500 plus frontline workers from all different industries across the US. And the thing that stood out was they said, there are channels for me to share my feedback and ideas, but what often is missing is the action on the other side of the sharing. So it's the curiosity to understand, what do my workers think? What do they feel? What are their ideas for innovation? And then it's the call to action. What am I going to do with that information? I think the breakdown comes when managers and leaders say, I'm hearing all of this, but we can't do it all. And I think the transparent response that says, these are our top 3 priorities as a business for the next quarter or 2. This is what we can action on. This is what we are not going to action on right now, is all that employers or employees are asking for. They're not expecting everything to be acted on, but they do want to see some level of change based on the feedback and ideas that they are sharing.
Sounds like really powerful research. I'm glad you brought that up. And the opportunity for managers, for leaders, is to say, what can we do? Let's do something. Let's hear and let's do something. It's like customer research where organizations will spend tons and tons of money on hearing what their customers need, want, care about, and then they don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So you've both collaborated in developing kind of a creative new approach to employee performance planning and performance reviews. And Julie shared a little bit about that with me. Would you talk a little bit about what that approach looks like and how it came to be?
Sure. I'll jump in at first and I'll let Dan share a little bit more. I think with Team Kids, there's always been a real knowing of our employees that they matter and that they were brought on for a purpose. I have worked really closely with Dan as our strategic advisor in so many different ways and a previous board member. And so it was an opportunity to work with him to not just launch an employee evaluation program where employees feel like, oh, they're going to catch me doing something wrong, or I'm going to over-evaluate that I'm great at this and they're going to say I'm not good at this. So there's a lot of anxiety, I believe, and a lot of apprehension when you start talking about those things. And so it was an opportunity to work with Dan and CoLabL on creating not just an employee evaluation program, but an actual robust, intentional, two-way opportunity to, give our employees an opportunity to share what they're proud of. What have they done that they're most proud of? What are the strengths that they have that maybe they feel they could do more? What are the professional development areas that they would love to grow into or need extra training in? And so for Team Kids, working with Dan was amazing, as Dan did an incredible training that I think immediately helped our staff in all of our states feel more connected to the process and realize this is an opportunity for me to shine. This is an opportunity for me to say, gosh, I'd really love to learn more about this. Is there a training? And Team Kids would pay for it. And so I think that training that Dan did with our team, we had the buy-in. I think there was more understanding that this is really about making your job even more fulfilling, so you feel like you're contributing in a powerful way. And one of the things that you were talking about, curiosity, that really struck me about the benefit of this is, if people come in and they're your staff and you're like, okay, we have 5 staff and they each should do 100 things and we'll get 500 things done, again, they're lost in this subjective, like, here's my grind. The truth is, and this is something I love working with you about, Dan, is because you dig in and you find the strengths in everyone. And you are so good at saying, yeah, in this position, this person might not be great at public speaking, but look what they're doing on the communication and the admin and the operational side. Like, how can we add these skills or have this person help mentor another person? So it's so personal. And I think in the process, once we launched it, is really understanding that everyone has a different style of working. They have different needs. I mean, going way back, I was captain of my track team at USC. And when you're coaching a team of athletes at a national level, like I had teammates who wouldn't perform if the coach didn't yell at them. You're better than that. And they'd be like, all right. And my coach knew, like, just say, you got this, Julie, and walk away. Do not add any extra pressure to me because I already put too much on myself. And so I find that in this process of really understanding that some employees need more check-in time. They need an opportunity for feedback. Others just need, like, you're doing a great job. And so for me in this process, it hones in on something that I value most at my team and anyone I work with is initiative. And I always say, bring a big, bold idea, whether you're in development or marketing or programs, like it could be better. What we're doing could be better with new eyes. So I think the curiosity, but also the permission, to take those ideas, to own successes. And so I think that this project, and I want to have Dan share a little bit more about what it looks like, it allows the individual opportunity to meet specific staff needs, and they are not the same. Just like if you have children, the same thing does not work with everyone down the line. And so that's something I really learned from Dan about, is really recognizing strengths of each person and being strategic about how they can build up maybe where those gaps are. But again, I think it's that initiative, that curiosity to drive focused, intentional opportunities for growth for everyone on the team, aligned with what we're trying to do. Because that's another thing that I think this process really helps with is, the organization has needs. It has jobs and job descriptions that are aligned to the strategic plan. And sometimes you can have somebody on the team that doesn't really fit that job responsibility, even though that's what the organization needs. So this opportunity really, I think, just helps everybody be aligned in their work, feel powerful and positive about what they're contributing. And so I think it's just key. It's kind of that roadmap of alignment of energy and strategy, capacity to ultimately succeed at what the goal or the mission is.
That approach sounds a lot like, let us help you do your best work so we do our best work as an organization, which is a really, really powerful approach. And it sounds a lot different than trying to correct behavior and that kind of thing. Dan, let's turn to you. And what would you add to this, and just in terms of kind of the framework that Julie is using with her organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share the tactic. I think it's super helpful for your listeners to understand some context too of kind of the organization. So there's a lot of new people coming into the Team Kids staff. Julie was out on medical leave and came back to the organization as the founder and CEO. We had new board members coming into position. So there was a lot of growth opportunities, both internally as well as from a programmatic standpoint. So 4 tactics as it relates to the performance management component here. First is co-creating the strategy. So always being mindful that the front line of your organization, whether that's your volunteers, your school administrators, the staff that are actually implementing the programs day in and day out or servicing customers, making sure that they're an active participant in co-creating that strategy. And not just the big picture, but the actual then work plans. Like, we want to achieve these 4 primary goals. How are we going to do it in the next 12 to 18 months, right? The second part then is looking at that strategy and saying, where do people's strengths and skills align, and where do we have gaps? Where we have gaps, it's an opportunity for us to invite others to the table and also develop the existing skill sets of the people that are already at the table. And so that's where we brought the training into place, because there is a younger staff at Team Kids, as Julie mentioned. You're recruiting a lot of college students as part of the talent pipeline who are coming in and doing their internships with the organization, ultimately then joining the staff. They're not familiar necessarily with performance management. So training them on, like, what does it mean to do performance management, and not necessarily the traditional view of once or twice a year, you're going to get a performance review formally with your manager, but performance management in the sense that every day, how are you holding yourself accountable to the things that the organization needs the most of in order to succeed and achieve its mission? I think the third is putting tools into the hands of people. So co-create the strategy, give people the opportunities for training, and then give them the tools, give them the resources to do this work. And what that looks like is, again, not just an annual performance template, but actually creating, what is your learning agenda as a board of directors, as an executive team, as the staff as a whole? what do we want to learn together in the next quarter? And how do we hold ourselves accountable to learning that together so that we can have the knowledge, have the skills to be able to move the mission forward? Tools like how to have an effective one-on-one, right? Like I have sessions with early career talent at global companies that have lots of resources. And I'm always amazed when I hear people say, I rarely have a one-on-one. Or my one-on-one is focused on, did I do what I said I was going to do in the last week or two? Versus like, sure, share those tactical updates, but zoom out and reflect on, are you contributing where you believe you can contribute the most, where your strengths align to the mission? And if not, how do we course correct in the short term, as well as thinking about long-term career planning? Fourth and final element is just wrapping all of this with a feedback culture, right? When I said intentionality earlier, intentional feedback from all levels, right? Like if we're out at a school site facilitating a Teen Kids Carnival, at any level, having team members feel comfortable sharing what's working and what's not working so that we're constantly in that state of improvement, always evolving, always making sure that we're adapting and putting the best of ourselves forward, both individually, but also as a team.
Those 4 tools, that list is something hopefully everybody took notes of or replays this section, because that's actionable. And Dan, as you said it, in the beginning, you could sort of hear this and say, well, it sounds so touchy-feely. But in reality, what I heard you say time and again is accountability, being able to actually use this to benefit the employee, but the organization. So it's very actionable, it's practical, and it is accountability in action, which I think is so important. So really, really helpful. I'm glad that you shared that. So how is this working so far, Julie? You've had this process in place for a little while. How's it working? How are your team members responding to it?
No, I think there's more alignment. I think people see a future at Team Kids and know that they can have feedback in areas that they want to learn. One of our donors paid for a top membership at 10C, so now we have all of the training available if there's areas that our team wants to grow or add extra skill sets in their toolbox. I think it's helped everyone kind of understand what other people's jobs are too and how they're interconnected. And it really laid the groundwork, I think, for a lot of the work coming, success around the bend with growth by having this process in place. Again, and I think it's that shift from that it's not a once a year you meet with your boss and it's a living process, and it might not be what's on the paper. It might be knowing that you can pick up a call and say, look, I'm really worried about this meeting, this happened and what should I do, and knowing that you can count on each other. One of the things with the process, the performance management on the front, Dan's plan had mastering performance and training for excellence. And I just love that, because it's like, how can we be the master of the job that we're doing, but also acknowledge that we're going to need training and support to really be excellent at the work that we do. And I think bringing back to, your opening Gallup poll, this isn't just a nice thing to do anymore. This is the only way any business will be successful. It is period, hard stop. And I think, it's really what Dan does. And it's amazing, because Dan's like one of the best strategic leaders I've ever worked with. And somehow, Dan, you blend really measurable tactics, outcomes, strategy with humanity and people and purpose and intentionality. And very few people can do that. I've worked with a lot of CEOs, and some of them are very much like, what am I going to get? And how much is this going to cost? What, the very measurable outcomes. But, those caring about your employees and providing a workplace of purpose should always have been the standard, right? It's the only way to be now, because people will not work for companies. I saw some statistics that like 54% of Gen Z are disengaged. It was something like 34% will leave within 2 years, and a huge majority, I don't remember the third statistic, that will leave even if they don't have another job. So I think it's for all the wrong reasons, and the pandemic and so many things really, forced the situations of hybrid work and a lot of things that have been challenged. But it's the right way to do business, whether you're a nonprofit. I've worked with large corporate companies that engage this type of process, and people, you can just tell being with them, their employees are proud of the company they work for. They're engaged. When you talk to them, they're proud of the job that they do or their peers. And so, I feel like our team is engaged, and I think it's really helped people know that they have a future and that people really care about what they're doing and how it's connected to the goal and the overall mission of the organization.
I'm going to recap what you said in terms of its employee engagement has moved from nice to have to need to have. And in this environment where we're competing for the best resources, the best human resources, organizations have to have a compelling value proposition to attract, retain, develop, grow talent. So very well said. Dan, I want to turn to you and just sort of as we come close to the close of today's session, thinking about the range of organizations that are part of the Greater Irvine Chamber. We serve small, medium, large, for-profit, nonprofit organizations. What are some of the things leaders can do starting today to elevate their employee engagement?
I would say there's 4 things. I always bucket things in my mind. So there's 4 tactical things that you could do. First, as leaders of any size organization of any industry, listen and observe is the first. And when you're listening and observing at all levels across functional areas, pay attention to what is also not being said, right? We do surveys, we experience survey fatigue, we have focus groups, and it feels very formal and structured. But the more you listen and observe, you start to notice and pick up on the trends of what people are feeling in addition to what they're saying. And the body language of your employees, what they lean into or don't lean into, says a lot. Second is the data. Look at the data when it comes to employee engagement in all sorts of subtopic areas. So don't look at it at the macro level, break it down into smaller sections to understand who are you attracting to your organization and what is the data telling you about who you're saying no to, who you're saying yes to. When they're in your organization, look at the data to see who is growing and moving within your organization, even if it's lateral moves or up or down, and who is leaving and what are the reasons why, right? So look at the data to really understand the ins and the outs, the details of people's actions, right? The third is to, with the data, with your observations, co-create the game plan for moving forward, right? The listen and observation is the present, the data is the past. The co-creation of the action plan is where are we going? With this knowledge, with this information and what we see around us every day, how do we want to evolve as individuals, as teams, as an organization? And I think the fourth piece, which kind of goes to, Julie, what you were just talking about, and Dave, what you were mentioning is like the soft thing. It's like it's the feel good versus the must do within our organizations. I think that fourth element is accountability must be integrated into our formalized performance process. So in other words, it's not just what we're producing as individuals and teams, but it's how we're producing it that should equally matter in the evolution of an organization. And I'll give you a quick point of that, right? If you look at that same Gallup study and you look at the last 30 years, for most of those 30 years, employee engagement has been under 35%. So even though we're at a record 11-year low, right? Yeah. It has never really risen above that 35% point, which to me is like so unacceptable and what drives me every day to do the work that I do at CoLabL. And so again, if we tie it into the performance management process and hold everyone accountable, not just leaders, everybody accountable to sharing their feedback, sharing their ideas, and actioning on it together, I think you'll start to see a shift in that number going up.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great thing to distill. The ability to change this outcome is in our listeners' hands.
Yep.
The people who are listening to this podcast have the ability. If you're a manager in any way, shape, or form, it starts with you. It's not the company, it's you.
Yep.
And so with these 4 items on this list, you have the ability to make a difference today. So I love that. So here's the hardest question for both of you, and it's brief and succinct, but what one piece of advice, and you only get one. You don't get 4 this time, Dan. You get one piece of advice that you'd like to leave with our audience in terms of helping them with elevating employee engagement. So Julie, let's go to you first. Just one.
Okay. Values, hiring people, partnering with people with similar values. As I shared with the Macquarie Group in New York, and we just received the New York City Mayor's award, Partnership Impact Award at Gracie Mansion for corporate and a nonprofit impacting New York City. And so I think with our staff, the corporations we work with, that you really do share the values of the company and integrity, because that's what keeps me up at night. 23 years, no controversy, because I just am so committed to working with, hiring, partnering with people with very high values and unshakable integrity.
Beautiful. Values. Dan, one item.
This was easy for me. It's on my vision board. I look at it every day, and it's to live by design, not default. So in any role, any level in your organization, be intentional in how you take action every day, not just flowing in the default.
Fantastic. Dan, Julie, thank you so much. This has been a terrific session. Appreciate the work that you're both doing, and thank you for sharing it with our audience. Folks, thanks so much for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for joining us for the Greater Irvine Chamber Business Insights podcast. To stay informed about upcoming podcasts and other important business news, please subscribe to our channel or check the Greater Irvine Chamber website.